There is nothing that says epic storytelling like a story about a 40-year-old that spends his entire time in an isekai world sitting inside of an onsen yelling at random fantasy girls to take off their clothes. One of those cute girls being voiced by, yes, Rushia, the Vtuber, who's caught in a massive amount of drama right now. So he's got that going for it. Yes. Pioneer log of the storied hot springs, alternate worlds springs, the reincarnation destination of an onsen fan who's around 40 years old, was a relaxing hot springs paradise. What a title. And immediately you know this is probably a light novel. Yes, it's a light novel. Yeah, we are eating good in the winter 2024 anime season. We have literally more ecchi in this season than I think we've had like all of last year. We have series like Chain Soldier, we have Gushing Over Magical Girls, Wedding Rings, all these types of series that, yes, are quite spicy. And thankfully, with companies like HIDIVE and Crunchyroll, they're actually getting the uncensored versions, which is kind of a shocker. They're doing good. But unfortunately, both of these companies had to miss like 3 shows this season in getting licensed, one being Pon no Michi, which who cares there, but one that was missed was unfortunately Pioneer Log. And what a loss it is, because now, in order to watch this epic tale, you have to sail the high seas to find this show that, honestly, after watching it, there's a good reason probably why it wasn't licensed, because, yes, unfortunately, there really isn't too much for this show. But this is my thoughts on the first 4 episodes. They're only 4-minute long episodes, 1 minute being basically the intro, so essentially 3 minutes, but this is my thoughts on it. Pioneer Log, aka Isekai Onsen, I'm going to call it from now on. Isekai Onsen opens up with Kozo, and he is in another world, and he's enjoying a nice hot spring. And he's joined by Mayudama, who is this fox spirit. Now, she's not necessarily a fox spirit. She was actually born from, like, prayers to the shrine, and she's always wanted to be a fox spirit, and so she ended up kind of turning into a fox spirit, or at least taking upon herself that appearance. And yes, very quickly, Kozo informs Mayodama exactly how she's supposed to enjoy a hot spring. Because yes, this guy is a massive fan of hot springs. Think like Vinny Mishini Sekai, but the onsen version of that. This guy, again, is around 40 years old, and all he loves is onsens. We find out later on that the reason why he's in this other world is that he was in our world trying to save this one village by finding this hot spring that was nearby, and as he was trying to look for it, he ends up falling and seemingly dying and appearing in this other world, this fantasy world. But yes, now that he's here, he's enjoying this new onsen inside this forest, and he's just loving it. And again, he's bestowing all the etiquette of enjoying a hot springs to Mayodama, telling her, you're not supposed to be around here without your clothes on. Take your clothes off now. So she takes off clothes off, and she starts hanging out inside the onsen with him. And then he's kind of explaining things like, you know, you can see the color of the water itself. It gives you an idea of like how much sulfur is getting into it and all the benefits that it comes with it, like making your skin soft and, you know, beautifying you and all that kind of stuff. Additionally, later on, this elf, Lilium, she shows up and she immediately thinks that they're both demons and perverts. I love what Mayudami's like, hey, I'm not a demon, and yes, he's a pervert, but he's not a bad guy. But yes, this Lilium shows up. She's actually from this elf tribe, and the elves in this world, apparently, they see onsens as curses. They're cursed waters, and so she was inspecting at the time and seen them there. And yes, once again, Kozo says, what are you doing? Well, that's not proper etiquette. Take your clothes off and get in the water. To which she agrees to it, and by her own thought process here, becomes cursed. But yes, he explains to her, no, this onsen is not cursed. It's actually good for you. It beautifies your skin, all this kind of stuff. And yes, they proceed to tease her until her sister shows up, who was checking in on her, and gets informed once again that, yeah, it's not cursed, and to take your clothes off. Yeah, that's the story so far. That's literally like, I don't know, 12 minutes worth of show so far is literally just Kozo telling girls to take their clothes off, get in the onsen, and enjoy it, and here's all the benefits of it. It really does feel like Pioneer Log or Isekai Onsen. I told myself I was going to say Isekai Onsen from now on. Isekai Onsen is just basically about a nerdy guy that loves onsen constantly telling fantasy girls to take their clothes off. Because to him, nothing is more important than enjoying an onsen properly. It's kind of that dumb aspect of this guy's not necessarily a pervert. He's just this is how you enjoy onsen, so be respectful of the onsen and do it properly kind of thing. He does even note this idea, like Lilium, when they kind of mentioned the idea that he yelled at her saying that he was gonna execute her unless she took him off and got on the onsen, and so she was afraid of being executed. And they were like, oh, that was just a joke. And she stands up all mad, and he's like, you're showing everything. Sit back down. So it's like he's not flustered by it, but at the same time, he's not looking for it. So he's got that that protagonist of a ecchi / harem type of show, and the idea that he just doesn't seem to have the appeal to it and at least acknowledges it. But again, what my thoughts are on this show overall is that it is just, that is the show, which I don't really expect too much out of a short series, but it is one of those ones where I was kind of coming into the show hoping that along with the ecchi, there would be some sort of humor. I do appreciate the ecchi, but I also need something to kind of give it some legs. Give me something to kind of chew on. And so far, besides like this brief moment where Mayodama and initially Kozo's teasing Lilium, saying it was a joke, and she stands up and he tells her to sit down, and then you have Mayodama kind of following up saying, oh yeah, it was actually, that was a lie of a lie. And so Lilium stands back up just because she wanted to see her stand up and flustered and everything like that. It also has a habit of doing this whole thing where like it'll introduce a character and then like jump forward, and then at some point they like later on bring up the question mark of why am I here, or who are you, why are you actually here? Like essentially the whole opening segment is literally Mayodama with him in the onsen, and at some point finally he goes, oh, by the way, who are you? It's like he's been chilling in the onsen this whole time, and then like, oh yeah, introductions. Same with the elf. She shows up and they yell at her to take her clothes off, but at the same time, it cuts to the next episode and she's literally been in the onsen for a while, and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, introductions. There is like a little bit of funny aspect of that. Besides that, like it's not really been funny. Like it's not really a funny series. Now it is classified, I think the light novel is an ecchi fantasy, so it doesn't really have a comedy listing. What I'm assuming is the original source material is just mostly around the idea of, yes, nerding out over onsen, plus probably descriptions of these hot elves and whatnot coming in there. And I don't know, just the idea of him telling them to take off their clothes over and over again. That's literally the shtick for this entire series. And it feels like every episode is introduce a new character, he yells at them to take their clothes off. Introduce a new character, yells at them to take their clothes off. And then the following episode is always them sitting there, you know, naked inside the onsen. It's just, the unfortunate thing is, yes, it's not funny. It's not a really funny series. There is a level of absurdity to it, but that's pretty much it. It could be that the light novel has a lot more explanation, a lot more humor inside of the aspect of the onsen itself, and maybe that's just getting lost with the adaptation. Maybe the adaptation is just kind of scrunching it all down because, yes, it is a short. And with that, the only other thing that I can really want from the series to make it worth watching is, yes, the ecchi. Now here's where we have sort of an issue, and I don't know the 100% confirmation on this. There is a censored and uncensored version of this series, and I watched initially the first 2 episodes uncensored. And yes, top halves were uncensored. Unfortunately, even with the uncensored version, bottom halves were censored. Like even like back shots of characters, it was blurred down there. So it's like, it's not even fully uncensored, but yet uncensored. But the unfortunate thing is that through episode 3 and onward, it seems like the only available one that I'm getting, even raw, is censored. So it seems as if at some point they chose to either stop broadcasting with a certain group uncensored, or they just stopped doing uncensored altogether, which is really unfortunate because if you're coming to the show, you're coming to the show because it's ecchi, and to not really get to see anything, there's no real point to the show. If there's not a good story or good comedy go along with it, it loses all of its value because now the characters are covered up with steam. So it's like, at this point, episode 3 and onward, there's no point to watching the show unless maybe you're getting a lot more laughs out of the series than I am. Additionally, on top of that, this show doesn't look that good. And yes, when it's an ecchi show, I typically want to have very good drawings of characters. If the appeal to the show itself is the risque-ness, is the showy aspect of it, the fan service, that fan service needs to look good. Otherwise, you're pulling away the fan, and what underneath it is just kind of odd. Now, it's not terrible looking, but at the same time, the characters are off model a lot. There's not really much movement to the show itself. A lot of the shots themselves aren't really high in detail or anything like that. Like a lot of ecchi shows, whenever there's like close up of characters, they try to put a lot more detail in the show itself. I mean, good examples, even with Tale of Wedding Rings, that show itself, when it wants to get really spicy, it gets close up and it's got the shine to it and everything like that. This show doesn't have that. It's just very basic animation, if anything, which honestly, with Wolf's Bane and this new Bloom Z, I don't even know what that studio is. I don't really expect too much, but it's still what it is. One other thing is the voicing. I've had a lot of people criticize the non-dub watchers as that we kind of have this mindset that, yes, everything out of Japan voicing is perfect. This series is not perfect. This series, the voice acting is not that great. Especially, and I'm going to bring it up again, yes, Lilium is voiced by Rushia, a VTuber. Now, nothing against Rushia herself. There's that whole controversy there. And there's even the question mark as if this show is going to kick her off right now because of what all the lawsuits and stuff that are happening right now around Rushia. But either way, she's voicing Lilium, and she's not doing a great job. I mean, she's got some really great reactions, but I think the actual recording itself isn't that great. I mean, you can hear her actual voice hitting the microphone, and it's kind of getting that little bit of a bump effect that's happening from just her voice projecting. But again, I think the bigger question mark that a lot of people have is, yes, is she going to get kicked off? I don't think so, because the show is not that popular. It's not that big of a production. It's just kind of a throwaway show on the side just to, again, be commercials for the show. At its core, the only real value here is guy that really loves onsens trying to teach people etiquette and the enjoyment of onsens. Like, there's this whole moment where he tells Lilium, close your eyes and just sit there. And then she sits there for a while, again, thinking this is a curse, and she's kind of just taking in the nature, taking in the sounds and the feeling of the onsen itself, till eventually she goes, oh yeah, this is actually a really good thing. It's just kind of one of those things of like, let me tell you how much I really love onsens. So at the end of the day, obviously the big question mark that everybody has, should I go out of my way away from Crunchyroll and High Dive and all those easy sources to try to find this show? I don't think so. It's unfortunately one of those things where I think there was probably a good reason why it wasn't licensed, and that's probably because most of the appeal is going to be the ecchi, and most of these companies don't even want to go anywhere near something like that. But it's one of those things where you kind of acknowledge that there really isn't much to the show. It just really does feel like a very bare bones advertisement to the light novel. This is literally a commercial. It's commercial in length and commercial in concept. It is just literally to say, this is what this light novel is about. Go check it out. And for that, and the fact that it's censored, and the fact that it doesn't look that great, it's kind of a toss-up unless you're really, really desperate for some ecchi this season, which, again, we're flooded with it right now. We have so many ecchi shows right now. This is kind of the least of all them. But we'll see if later down the road, maybe we'll get uncensored versions of the episodes. But for now, it's just kind of a censored show with just a very mediocre writing to it. But anyhow, that's my thoughts on Isekai Onsen. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know what's all this series, if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button, subscribe my content. I do news reviews, first impressions, top list if it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you like this content and you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate it, but it does. And y'all take care.